let's jump into the fishbowl. So you've had a chance to organize your evidence, and what I want to do is have a conversation now about our critical indicator 3A that references purpose and then the progression of that lesson. Because before we do anything else, we have to determine what the objective was. Our absolute role as observers is to determine what the objective was and if students progressed toward mastering the objective. Bottom line, that's what we're doing in that classroom every day, and then we coach a teacher as to how to be more effective in that process. So let's start right there. Who can tell me what the objective was for today's lesson?
Go ahead. It seemed like there were a lot. Like I had, at first it was they're annotating and looking for literary devices, I think. And then he talked about comparing poems for tone. And then he talked about it 6 stations. But they started by saying that they're going to do hyperbole. So I really didn't know. And as I'm going through and looking at all of the attributes under 3A, and I have to score each attribute, so then I get a mean score to get a mean score for 3A. I'm new. You mean I don't have to do that?
Oh, newbie.
Oh, newbie.
Oh,
But
newbie.
I couldn't tell what the actual instructional
Newbie,
purpose was.
you
Maybe
need
that's
a
what I'm trying to
You
get
need a
across.
piece of candy. You're stressing out. You're stressing out. All right. So let's talk. Greg said a couple of things that were important. First and foremost, we don't necessarily need to rate attribute by attribute. For this process, it's really important to go attribute by attribute so we can really make a strong determination with our evidence as to what's happening, but we don't necessarily rate every attribute. Greg said a couple of other things. He mentioned some of the things that appeared to be part of the lesson objective or purpose. This is my favorite part of what we do here, and this becomes very fun for us. These are those things that we say because we're amongst friends, and what we say in class stays in class. But when we go back out there and we have our meetings or we're writing our feedback, we're going to try to avoid these. So we're going to always today, if it gets up in my red, we're going to try to come up with a different way to say that. So if Greg is saying, well, it seemed like, how can we shift that into a more objective way to present that to a teacher versus seemed?
Well, you have to have some evidence to back it up.
So anytime, most often what you're going to find, if it ends up over here, we just need evidence. So the other thing I tell you guys, though, is that you have been chosen to be in this room because you have a lot of skills. You understand instruction, you have instinct, and we can't throw all of those out the window and say that doesn't exist. It does exist. So when you go in a classroom and you feel your gut, you're most likely correct in your gut, but we don't operate in that world. So if it seemed like we couldn't, and I saw your faces when I said, what was the objective? And you all went, we have a lot of advanced degrees in this room. And if we are struggling to determine the purpose, most likely they are struggling to determine the purpose. We just need to have evidence as to whether it was clear to students or not.
The students even said that. I think they said, I think we need to underline for tone. And then the other student goes, well, yeah, then I think we have to underline the entire poem.
Excellent piece of evidence, Greg. So we used a direct quote. Student said, I think we need to underline. So we are moving from our perception of the objective to their perception of the objective. Mary, what do you want to add?
I didn't see that the teacher stated or posted an objective clearly or the purpose of the work that they were doing.
That's an excellent piece of evidence because a lack of evidence is evidence. So something was stated. Does anyone have that?
More about what they were going to do.
He said you're going to look at these poems and compare.
So a direct quote. Thanks, Bonnie.
But he also said you're going to rotate the 6 stations, and there's directions at each station.
What else?
He said we're building on what we learned from yesterday and adding hyperbole.
And then he had to ask, does anybody know what hyperbole means? And then it became
Stop right there.
hyperbole.
Hyperbole. fact that a student mispronounced hyperbole is a piece of evidence. What's it evidence of? Say it. Didn't hear it? Say it with confidence.
So his kids knew absolutely nothing in the room.
Oh
They knew
my,
nothing.
Greg.
Was that a little too hyperbolic?
They knew nothing.
Well, I'm being hyperbolic.
The fact that a student mispronounced a
I
term,
love it.
what is it evidence of? Yeah, I'm talking about fishbowl peeps.
I know you all want to talk, but it's in the fishbowl now, so.
Because this is what really happens.
That he didn't spend enough time defining key terms and definitions. That
Okay,
we know
Greg.
that you need that key terms need explicit definitions.
So we're coming into
And it's
progression.
yeah.
Okay, so what you're telling me has to do with the progression
It was
of
like
the
2
lesson.
seconds. He said, "Who knows hyperbole?" A student defined it, and then they moved on, and that was it.
All right, so we're
No
getting
exemplars, no nothing.
you're getting a lot of statements from your evidence as to what was put out there as a purpose. So now let's talk about what were the tasks that were set up. So how did we start? How did the lesson progress?
Well, at first, they were going to write their own
Free write.
5-line verse.
Free write. What were
Told
the
them to laugh,
parameters?
be creative.
What were the expectations, parameters, or purpose of the free write?
5 lines about hair.
And to add quantitative evidence to that, he gave them 3 minutes to do that task.
Excellent.
So-
3 minutes.
Oh, so you can put down numbers? Like you put down numbers in your report?
Gina, why did you
Right.
capture that?
Well, because I wanted to see how long it was gonna take them to complete that, whether or not they were gonna spend, was he gonna spend too much time on that, or did he really specify? So,
Yay, Gina.
But-
Too much time.
I,
do that
but
by
you know, a
now.
lot of writing classrooms start off with
Could I
free
have a
writes
candy bar?
that may not be connected to like the actual learning. They're just kind of like prime the pump kind of activities. How do we count those if they're just kind of prime the pump stuff that may not be connected? Or
Let's
does that mean
throw
it's bad? Or
Let's throw that back at Greg. You're just fun. You're just fun.
love that
So
word.
let's talk about what Greg just asked, because we've all been in classrooms where the do now has gone 45 minutes. We've all gone in classes where the initial activity has nothing to do with the rest of the lesson and not connected at all to the objective. So it's not that it's bad. What's another word we can use for bad?
Inappropriate.
Inappropriate. What's another one? Look back at your rubric and see if it helps you with your language from 3A.
You see what Amy just did there? That's huge. Because a lot of times what we'll do is, oh, it's misaligned, it's disconnected. Go
But
back
how?
to your rubric and say, what does that particular indicator say, right? So now I'm bringing them right back to the rubric. So Amy did a nice little facilitated loop right there.
and maybe it maximized instructional time because he only took 3 minutes.
But let's come back to the initial
What?
question. What does it say in terms of the attribute that has to do with progression? Logical progression. What else?
And it was appropriate level of challenge.
So appropriate level of challenge. We're gonna talk about these. And what else? What's
You
the
write a
last
poem in
part?
3 minutes. That's hard.
What's the last part? It is hard.
To advance student
Woo!
learning.
Candy bar back there for Mary. Advanced student learning. Okay, so let's talk about this. Did this free write? Now, did anyone capture the initial requirements? Because we're going to talk about on my other page 3C and establishing criteria. Remember that one? So generally, when we're hearing the purpose established, we're also going to hear 3C and criteria. What was the criteria for this free write?
Write a 5-line poem of your choice. Make yourself laugh and be silly.
And no student can be wrong.
Be creative.
You're not allowed to challenge each other. And I liked when they all cheered for those about to write, "We salute you." So
Be creative, have fun. Hey, I'm used to whiteboards. Be creative, have fun. That's your criteria for your free write. So, can we say if that's the criteria, the lesson up to this point we're expecting involves devices, tone, hyperbole. Up to this point, we only understand what about the lesson? Do we know any of this yet?
No.
No. So this is our immediate introduction to the lesson. Is this setting them up for success in terms of a purpose?
No.
Why not?
Because they didn't have clear instructions about what to do. He never checked to make sure everyone was finished, and he never checked to see if they were successful.
Is that 3C though, and not
It
one?
is 3C. Thanks, Greg. It's monitoring. Nice. It is also making a shift if necessary. And so, Mary, did you want to build on that?
Well, I'm just gonna say the connection to the literary devices was never made. And I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but if I were that teacher and I taught those literary terms, figurative language, etc., I would wanna make the free write incorporate that. So I guess I didn't see any, activation of prior knowledge with regard to the purpose of today's lesson.
Okay, there it is. It's a really clean, objective way to tie in all of these terms in your head and to say there's not a connection made between the basic objective of the lesson. This did not begin. We're looking for building blocks. So how did this build capacity? If we can say, if they had in particular linked to the objective, we would have built capacity. What was the next piece of the lesson? What did they do next? Stations. What was going on in the stations?
Guess as good as mine.
Yeah, they had to analyze poems, reading.
I did like that they had to do for 3A that literacy strategies that they taught them to annotate the poems. I wish we knew what he said. He mentioned something like color coding literary devices. I wish we heard more, like better expectations about it. But he did bring in the literary devices stuff.
Excellent. You got another one up here. I did like. Why did we like it? Why did you like that part? What about it was
Well,
effective?
Annotating writing is as old as writing itself. We know that it's really the only way to get at close reading.
Okay, so he was leaning toward, and I think a lot of what we want to do is we're building on strengths. Remember, we're meeting teachers where they are. So we see a teacher incorporating station work, digging into poetry. We know Common Core is about close reading. But what can we say about the station? Stay with your progression idea. Did we see the station setting students up to construct understanding?